our menopause talk. This is the second time I've done the menopause talk, menopause and weight gain. And the reason I'm doing it again is because the first time I did it, I had such a huge, overwhelming response, as so many people are so confused as to what to do. You know, they've turned to alternative type of help, but what's happening is they're not getting the answers. So I'm really hoping tonight that I'll be able to uncover the mystery of menopause and give you some solutions that you can actually start to, implement into your life right away, so that you can not have to experience some of these symptoms that you have been experiencing. So I'm going to actually also just share my screen with you, and just please make sure that your mute button is on this evening. There we go. All right, so we're going to definitely take the mystery out of this. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I just was wanting to make sure that we were all here. So we're going to demystify this for you tonight and give you tons and tons of solutions, so that you can actually feel that you have some answers, and that we, can move forward with everything. So let me just give me 1 second here. I'm just allowing more people in. I know we have a lot of people that are joining us this evening, and I'm so grateful for that. So that's wonderful. So thank you. If you don't mind, just being patient for just a second. Excellent. All these little technical difficulties that we have sometimes when we're doing these presentations. So there we go. I think we're good to go. Perfect. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about who am I, and why am I talking about menopause, and what is making us gain weight, and the solution. So firstly, who am I? Well, I'm a nutritionist, and I've been a nutritionist since 1980. I've been working in private practice for all these years. I'm 62 years old. I have 3 grown children. I have 3 grandchildren. And I also am doing this because I had my first cycle. Well, my cycle started when I was 12 years old, and that's pretty early. My mom also had her cycle quite early. But the reason I'm doing this topic for you this evening is I absolutely experienced terrible, terrible menopausal symptoms. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was wide awake for hours. I had my period almost like every second or third day. I never knew, when I was going to get my cycle. I wasn't able to wear white pants. I became, I started to experience the weight gain, putting that weight around my waist, and getting a little bit bitchy and itchy, and all of those things that we can experience. So it really made me look at, later on, I really needed to search the meaning of menopause and what I can do for my clients, because as I said, so many women are suffering from this and having symptoms much earlier in life than usual, and probably because of the way that we're living our life and the foods that we're consuming and our lifestyle. So it's all making us gain weight. And I'm going to provide you tonight with a real solution. So I'm hoping that you're going to get great information. And we're going to talk about that solution as it's one hormone. That's all we're going to talk about. One hormone that's going to make a huge difference for you. If you want to take some notes, it'll be great. However, I also will send you the recording afterwards. So if you've missed something, please bear with me. I talk kind of quickly. I want to get so much information to you this evening because I'm so passionate, and I will try to give you everything in a short period of time, and then we're going to open it up to questions after the webinar. So, all right, so let's go to the next slide. So we know that menopause is not a disease. All the symptoms are blamed on decreased production of estrogen and progesterone. And I love this next slide here. Just going to move these out of the way for myself for a second. So, contrary to popular opinion, menopause is not a disease. It is a normal process in a woman's life. It's a time when there's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual nurturing. We get hot flashes, night sweats, memory problems, fatigue, weight gain, loss of libido, and everybody doesn't want to lose their libido. Headaches are all blamed on decreasing of the production of the hormones, when the true cause is really imbalanced adrenal glands, liver, thyroid, and your digestive system. So we're going to talk mostly about why we're having these menopausal symptoms, it's really related to your adrenal glands, your liver, your thyroid, your digestive system, and another hormone, which we'll talk a little bit later, which is regulating everything in the body that's causing you to have these symptoms and symptoms which you don't have to experience anymore. When you make these changes that I'm going to offer you tonight, you're going to notice a huge difference in how you feel, in how you sleep, and nobody wants to walk around carrying the extra weight around their tummy because you probably experienced some of these symptoms already. Perhaps you've had, a slender body your whole life, and all of a sudden you've got this weight that's wrapped around your tummy and you don't like it. So we're going to talk about why that goes there, and what does the liver and the thyroid and the digestive system have to do with all of that. Also, please, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box and I will address those to you afterwards. And then plus I'll open it up so that we can have a little bit of a conversation. So please, whatever questions you have, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box. So there are several hormones that are related to menopause, and that is estrogen and progesterone. And we know that estrogen is a hormone that plays various roles in the body. In the female, it helps develop and maintain both the reproductive system and the female characteristics of the breast and the pubic hair. There's also progesterone, which is a hormone released by the ovaries and regulates ovulation and menstruation. But in addition to that, we also have testosterone and we also have DHEA. So testosterone is an androgen, which is produced in the ovaries and the adrenal glands. And we're going to talk about how your adrenal glands are affecting your menopausal symptoms. And then, of course, there is DHEA, which helps you to sleep. And it's made by the adrenal glands and it's converted into testosterone. So for sex drive, you want to have all these hormones, particularly your testosterone, at the perfect levels. And all these hormones can be affected by the way we're eating and the way we are living our life. And we need to change that and make some, really wonderful changes can really change the way the hormones are working in the body. So we've all heard about this, perimenopause. This hormones can shift as early as 35. You may even notice that children today are starting to get their cycles much, much earlier in life. And that's because there's so many hormones that are put into our food supply, particularly some of the dairy products, and it's making children, because there's so many chemicals, which is stimulating the hormone production in children. So we're seeing kids getting their cycle really, really young. But you can also have perimenopause as early as 35 years old, which is going to cause menstrual irregularities, this breast tenderness, this brain fog, insomnia, weight gain, hot flashes. And then, of course, the menopause is when you have no longer have your cycle anymore. And that can lead to the bloating. Nobody likes that. And this can be due to food, the weight gain, primarily around the midsection, increased in blood pressure, your facial hair can start to grow. And, I even noticed myself that I had hair growing out of my moles, which is like, or horrible. And, that's just crazy. Hot feet, insomnia, vagina itch, low libido, mood changes, brain fog, and even vagina dryness. And let's talk about that because it's a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about, vagina dryness. You can actually use, there are vitamin E little suppositories that you can use in your vagina. And through sexual intercourse, you can even use coconut oil, which can alleviate some of the symptoms of not only the itch, but of the dryness. And it's complete. If you use an organic coconut oil, it'll really help you. I find that for myself, it's great. So just a little tip on that. So hormones are so critical and so important, and they have to work like a symphony. We have to remember that the orchestra master is the pituitary gland, and the hormones is something we don't really think about. We just think that they're naturally going to, take care of themselves, but they put you to sleep at night, they wake you up in the morning, they control your blood pressure, they build up your bone, they maintain amazing muscle tone, they lubricate your joints, they govern your growth, and they make your body produce energy and healing. They burn fat, and they also allow pregnancy and birth to occur. So these are really important that our hormones work in harmony with each other in a healthy body that we, energetically, we feel great. I kind of, as a nutritionist, I believe that people, should wake up feeling like a 10 every morning. They have energy all day. So if you notice that, even regardless of how old you are, your energy should be constant. And if it's not constant, if there's too much stress, then we need to look at what's causing that, because again, it's going to come back to our liver and to our adrenal glands and possibly even the thyroid. I love this, and I call this the 7 dwarfs of menopause. And I'm sure some of you this evening can relate to that, and I experience this myself: itchy, bitchy, sleepy, sweating, bloated, forgetful, and all dried up. Sometimes, ladies, people think this is just normal to experience it. Yes, you may have some of these symptoms, but these are all preventable, and these are all things that we can change. Just because we are a woman, just because we're going through menopause, doesn't mean this has to be us. Where people search out the information, because often, you go to the doctor, and I've certainly had my experience with that, where they basically just say, that's life, just get used to it. But I don't believe that. I think that if we get to the root cause of what is causing all these symptoms, then we can clearly go through menopause easily, gracefully, and joyfully, and then come out the other end feeling great, and then not putting on that extra weight that a lot of us are suffering from and complaining about. So the main reason, and I said this earlier tonight, is due to the imbalance in the adrenal glands and the liver and the thyroid and the intestine. So that's a pretty big thing to understand. So we really need to make sure that all of these are working in harmony and optimally. So whatever is going on in your body right now, just know that the body wants to heal all the time. It's looking for healing, and it's how we treat the body, it's how we feed the body, it's what type of exercise we get. All of these are going to affect your adrenal glands, your liver, and your thyroid. Just because we have an imbalance in one of these doesn't mean that this is your life sentence, for sure. So let's talk about adrenal. You've probably heard about your adrenal glands. So they sit on top of your kidneys on your back, and they produce 2 hormones. One is called adrenaline and one is called cortisol. And we all need a healthy response of adrenaline and cortisol. So adrenaline is that hormone that gets secreted. Let's just say, somebody runs in front of your car and you jam on the brakes, and all of a sudden you have this surge. You can physically feel this surge of hormones racing through your body, which prepares you for fight or flight. That is adrenaline. Then there is cortisol, and cortisol is the hormone that is secreted into your system after long, long periods of struggle and stress. So let's say you have a really tough job, maybe it's financial or whatever. There's just this stress all the time, and your body becomes really depleted by that. And then when your adrenals are affected that way, it's going to affect your sleep. It's going to give you headaches. It's going to give you allergies. I think somebody doesn't have their mute button on, so if you don't mind, if you could just mute yourself, that would be great. Actually mute everybody here for a second.
The estimates for this house. The high range is $700,000 or more than.
Sorry about that, everybody. Sometimes people forget to mute themselves, which I certainly have done that to myself. So increased cortisol, again, this is a blood sugar problem, which can lead to type 2 diabetes, fat accumulation. We know where all that goes, right around that tummy, lowers your immune system. And we know right now with COVID, it's really imperative that we keep our immune system strong. And by eating healthy and making sure that everything works well, then it's going to make a difference. When you think about your whole body's health, just think about you're trying to get every organ, every gland, and every system working optimally. And there are so many things that we can do to do that, to make the small changes to have a huge effect on your physicality. And then, of course, when your cortisol is high, you're going to be exhausted and you're going to have fatigue. And I certainly have had 2 major burnouts in my life where I used to run marathons. I used to overwork a lot. And I find that, it's fine. We think that, we tell everybody we're so busy, but actually we're exhausted. And when you're exhausted, you have too much of this hormones raging through your body. And unless we deal with that, your menopausal symptoms are going to become heightened, and that's going to be a problem for you. And then, of course, your adrenal cortex secretes both the male and female sex hormones, the estrogens and the androgens during transitional years, when your ovaries go on vacation, which that's when we go through menopause. Okay. I love everything to do about the liver. As a nutritionist, this is one organ that we really spend a lot of time talking about. But most of us have no idea that the liver has over 500 functions in the body. I want you to think about the liver. It's like the airport. 500 people get off the airplane, they have 500 pieces of luggage, and it's sitting there. The problem with our liver today, just imagine if those 500 people did not pick up those 500 pieces of luggage at the airport, everything's going to back up. And that's what happens in our body, is the body backs up because we don't have the right nutrients to facilitate the elimination and detoxification of the foods and the toxins that are coming into our system. So things back up, and that creates a lot of sluggishness in the body. An overburdened liver has a decreased ability to break down this excess sex hormones, especially estrogen. And that creates excess estrogen in your system, which you don't want to do. So we need to know that it's the major cleansing organ of the body. And we need to make sure that we have healthy food, lots of water, and of course the exercise. If you don't know, your liver actually sits on the right side of your body. And sometimes people can actually feel the liver and the gallbladder is just kind of backed up. And there are certain foods that will make sure that the liver functions optimally. And most of those are the green vegetables. But our diet, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which is fast, frozen, fried, junk, and processed, puts a tremendous amount of strain on the liver, and therefore everything backs up, and then we have a decreased ability to break down these excess sex hormones, especially estrogen. And then, of course, there's our thyroid. And if you don't know where your thyroid is, it's right in your neck, and it's like a little bit of it's a butterfly-shaped organ, and it's mostly regulating your body temperature and your body metabolism. And we've all heard of low thyroid or high thyroid, otherwise known as hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. We all have heard of things like Graves' disease, and we've also heard of things like Hashimoto's disease. These are things that are related to the thyroid when the thyroid is not working properly. So when you have low thyroid, you might find yourself with constantly cold hands and feet, constipation, fatigue, depression, restless leg syndrome, slow metabolism, brain fog, your hair falling out. And with the high thyroid, this one usually leads to, the Graves' disease, where the people just rapidly lose a lot of weight and they feel exhausted. One of my clients had Graves' disease. We discovered that when I did a blood test with him, and he was just barely able to get off the couch and had 3 little babies at home, and we're able to manage his Graves' disease rapidly and get him back to his desired weight again. But when the thyroid is high, you're going to get this increased appetite, this heart palpitation. There's a lot of nervousness and anxiety, which can lead to goiter, which is a big bump in your throat here. And then adequate thyroid gland is necessary for the production of progesterone. So it's really important that we get all this progesterone. So the thyroid is critical for our health, and we're going to talk about what breaks it down. So preservatives. So preservatives disrupt your endocrine system by changing and competing with naturally occurring estrogen and your weight gain. So if you think you're not getting any preservatives, I think you need to think twice, because really and truly, the last time I went to Loblaws, which was last Sunday, if I walk down the middle of the grocery store, as opposed to the outside of the grocery store, there is all this processed food. There is canned vegetables and fruit and chips and cookies and cakes and all that. Every single one of those on that shelf has preservatives. Now, the preservatives are not for you. They're for keeping that food on the shelf longer. So this disrupts our endocrine system as well. Of course, there's pesticides as well as added growth hormones in dairy and animal products, which can bind to your hormone receptor in the cell and blocks your body's naturally occurring hormones from binding with to get rid of it. Of course, alcohol can affect your sex drive. And we all know that if you've had too much to drink, well, it's going to be a bad night for you. And it's also going to affect your testosterone and estrogen. No one wants to have a bad night, right? And your estrogen level. Let's be honest. We all want to have good sex in our lifetime. We want to make sure that everything is working, perfectly. And then, of course, you've heard of this BPAs, BPS. These are the plastic bottles, which are the endocrine disruptors. Last summer, I was going up north, and it was like, remember how hot it was? The weather was just so steamy hot, and we pulled in to get gas, and outside on the grass was this skid of 1,000 plastic bottles just sitting there in the heat. And we know that when plastic is sitting in the heat, it's actually going to the 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 chemicals from the plastic, the BPAs, they literally go into the water, and we're drinking that. So I am not a fan of drinking anything from a plastic bottle unless it is a BPA and BPS free. And those ones are the really hard plastic. If you can take your plastic bottle and crunch it, you know that that's not really healthy. You really want to drink your water from a water glass, like a real glass or a stainless steel. And then, of course, putting anything in plastic and storing it in your refrigerator in plastic is not a good idea because it can be an endocrine disruptor too. And I'm really not a fan of putting anything in the microwave because you're trying to get optimal health. You want food that's going to nourish your body, your cells, your organs, and your glands. We can't do that if we disturb the way we're heating that food. So I had 3 kids and I never used a microwave. So, and a lot of people are using just throwing those plastic TV dinners into it, which is adding insult to injury by creating that whole problem for people. So it's important to just use glass and you know what, and cook the old fashioned way, to put something on top of the stove. So it's not actually that hard. And then, of course, there's that pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is basically, he's the master endocrine organ, and he regulates all the hormones in the body. So if everything works properly, then we will experience very minimal menopausal symptoms. But because of our daily life, because of our stress, because of the COVID, because of maybe we don't get enough exercise, because maybe we don't have healthy relationships, all of these things can impact our health. And it's really important for me personally as a nutritionist, for you to make sure that you're actually taking care of yourself. I really believe in some kind of self-care, whether I'm a big exercise person. I do like a spiritual exercise every morning. I really try to eat really clean. And most people don't know what clean is, but clean is really food that grew from the Garden of Eden. So if man has to do something with it, it's probably not the best food. However, I have to say, this is my disclaimer, I do believe in having fun. I do believe it's what you do 80% of the time that's going to matter the most. So, I'm all up for a pizza once in a while. I'm all up for potato chips once in a while, but it's really what you do 80% of the time that's going to impact the state of your health, and particularly your hormones, and particularly your pituitary gland. So now what are we going to do? What works? What can we possibly do that's going to help with these hormones in the world that we live in right now? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm going to give you the secret, the solution to balancing out menopausal symptoms so that you can feel and experience optimal health. Because you know what? Here I am, 62. I honestly have so much energy. It's ridiculous. I like to have fun. I like to work a lot, but I really believe it's our birthright to feel and look fabulous all the time. But it's just going to take a little bit of work on our part. We do need to, I always say to people, it's not what we're doing, it's what we're missing. And what we're missing is adding the fruit and adding the vegetables and adding the water and making sure that we're not eating too much processed foods and perhaps maybe being in kind of toxic relationships. But it's really important for us to also to kind of like take a step back and look at what are you doing right now and where do you want to go? Because I believe if you know what you want and you kind of implement these steps, you're going to achieve what you're looking for. So I encourage you to continue to make sure that you have lots of self-care. And of course, we have nutrition intervention. Yeah, I know it sounds boring. I was on a panel the other day with a world class scientist who's talking about how we are never before has our world seen so much problems with disease. And, there's so many people that are just succumbing to disease. And I think 50% of the population in the United States is on some kind of medication. And a lot of this can be prevented because, I know when I worked in the doctor's office, it was very little questions were asked about what you're eating and what are you drinking. And that seems to be where the problem lies. This is my favorite line. I've been using this for years. And if you've ever heard me speak before, I'm going to repeat this because I think it really holds so much truth. We live in a world where burger is the king and dairy is the queen. My father, when he was alive, he used to say to me, you should be careful what you're saying. But it's true. We live in a world where burger is the king and dairy is the queen. We live in a fast food place for sure. And of course, this is also one of my favorite things. We have 5 new food groups: frozen, fast, fried, junk, and processed food. Now, if you look at all these foods, and I'm not completely against frozen food, I've got some frozen mangoes and strawberries and some meat in my freezer, but I don't have any frozen dinners. I don't have any, I try to minimize my amount of frozen food because I particularly like to have fresh food. So if we look at frozen, fast, fried, junk food, we also note that they're beige, they lack a lot of water, they lack a lot of vitamins, they lack a lot of fiber, they're loaded with salt, which is increasing hypertension, which is a whole other thing, with people having high blood pressure. And also, they don't make you feel full. So think about that. You go to a restaurant and they put a big bowl of white bread in front of you, and they do that to make you feel full. But you don't feel full. You just feel like you can eat more and eat more. However, if they gave you a bowl of 12 grain bread, after 3 or 4 bites, you're going to feel more satisfied. So when you eat healthier, you feel more satisfied and your cravings for these types of foods go away. I also believe that if it has to pass a chemistry lab on the way to your mouth, it probably isn't food. And if you can't see through it, you probably shouldn't drink it. So those are kind of my little things. But remember, I said it's the 80-20 rule. It's what you do 80% of the time matters the most. And I'm going to have a chip from time to time too. So why does size matter? Well, all of these foods that we're eating and all these hormones that are being disrupted and all of our lifestyle things that are, which everybody seems to have so much going on in their life and so many things to take care of. What happens is if you're a female and your waist size goes above 35 inches, or a male where the waist size is greater than 40 inches, it is actually indicated that these people, maybe perhaps yourself, are suffering from something called metabolic syndrome. Now, metabolic syndrome is a name given to heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular problems, and high blood pressure. Because you see, what happens here, you gain too much of this visceral fat. We're going to come back and talk about why size matter and why the visceral fat is the problem for your not being able to manage the menopausal symptoms. We also need to understand that there are other hormones that are involved in menopause, and they are ghrelin, leptin, insulin, and glucagon. So ghrelin is that hormone that turns on when you get hungry. We all know what that feels like, and all of a sudden you just get this grumbling. So your body is telling you to get your hunger. Then we have this leptin. Now, leptin is the hormone that is secreted from your brain while you're eating that tells you you're full. However, if you have too much fat in your body, your leptin receptors will turn off. So you'll never feel satisfied. I love to watch my 600-pound life. And I'll tell you why. I love to see the transition in people, but I'm also fascinated that even though they're incapable of getting out of bed, they're eating all day long and they never feel satisfied. And that's because they have so much fat storage that their body's not able to turn on their leptin, which is telling them that they're full. And then we have insulin. And insulin we've all heard about. Most of us don't know a lot about it. I think from this talk tonight, the liver and insulin are hugely important to understand. But insulin is that hormone that is created in your pancreas. And its purpose is to get sugar into your cells. But it's also a fat storage hormone. And with menopause, insulin is one of the things that we really need to look at and understand so that you can experience less of your symptoms and feel free of this weight gain that a lot of us are complaining about. And lastly, there's another hormone, and that's called glucagon. You probably never heard of that. I never knew about that until years ago. But glucagon is a hormone that turns on if you eat protein first. So it actually is it's an antagonist of insulin, and they all have to work in harmony with each other so that our hormones all work in optimal range. So insulin is really the problem here. Insulin, number one, is the problem for everything, for most of our problems today. And if insulin is out of balance, most of our hormones are out of balance too. So when insulin is out of balance or it's elevated, it's going to cause high blood pressure. It's going to cause blood fat abnormalities. You've probably heard of fatty liver disease. This is all related to high insulin levels. It's going to lead to abnormal immune system functioning. And we know that with COVID, it's really important that your immune system is optimal so that you can be more protected from that. It can lead to acne. It could lead to ankle swelling, constipation, and decreased memory and concentration. Sometimes you'll even notice that with insulin, if you have an insatiable thirst, usually there's an indicator that your insulin levels are out of balance and potentially pre-diabetic. So that's something that we can figure out through doing a blood test. And of course, there's two types of diabetes. There is type 1, which is basically a person is born with no insulin, so they have to take insulin every day. But type 2 diabetes is actually a world pandemic too as well, because more and more people are having it because their insulin levels are out of control. And there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Also, high levels of insulin, depression. I mean, really, when you think about it today, like nobody wants this right now. It's already hard enough in the world. But if we manage our sugars, we're going to manage all our hormones. So it's really important that we do that. It's going to cause fatigue. You know, if you ever had a meal where okay, let me say it this way. If you walk out of a restaurant and you feel exhausted, I'm going to tell you you've eaten the wrong food. You should walk out from your dinner table or a restaurant feeling energized. If you're walking out of that restaurant feeling tired, you probably had too many of the wrong type of carbohydrates. And again, that comes back to the fast, frozen, fried, junk, and processed foods that's going to exhaust you. Especially after Christmas dinner, we all have a mixture of foods. We all want to lie down and have a quick little nap. It's because our body's not getting the right food. Elevated insulin also causes irregular menstrual cycles, which many of you are experiencing right now, irritability, sugar cravings, water retention, weight gain, especially around the middle. And we all know that sugar cravings are just nasty because we just can't seem to, if that candy's in the house. I know before I used to be really addicted to sugar myself. If anybody brought something in the house that was sweet, it would call my name. And I know you can relate to this. I literally had to get up and go get that. And I absolutely was completely addicted to sugar before, but I'm not addicted to that anymore. And of course, we want to make sure that we want to get that insulin levels down, especially so we don't have that weight gain around the middle. So you have 4 types of fat in your body, which is really interesting because a lot of us just think of fat as fat, but we have 4 types of fat. You have brown, subcutaneous, white, and visceral. So brown fat is the fat that's mostly in your shoulders and it burns a lot of calories. And babies are born with lots of brown fat. That's what makes them chubby and it can generate a lot of heat. I live in the beaches here in Toronto, and for some reason during COVID, every Sunday, a group of people take their clothes off with their bathing suits and jump in the lake. And they're doing that to turn on their brown fat, but it's a very extreme way to burn calories. And personally, it would probably give me a heart attack. But the brown fat definitely turns on in the wintertime when we're just walking. We know that we can burn a lot of calories. And that subcutaneous fat, well, that's that fat that we can pinch at the side of just over top of our pants. There's nothing wrong with it. It's unsightly. It helps get oxygen to the skin. But it's not dangerous. And then, of course, we have white fat. So if you work out, whether you go for a walk or a swim and you have a Peloton, it's going to get utilized and it contains leptin. So we want that leptin in there because leptin is that fat that makes us feel satisfied and satiated. And then lastly is this visceral fat. This is the problem. Visceral fat is a fat that wraps around your tummy that is measured with the tape measure over the belly button, and it provokes inflammatory pathways which wraps around your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your pancreas, and your liver. The problem with visceral fat, it puts out something called these cytokines, and it creates inflammation. Now, a lot of us think that inflammation is just sore, red, and swollen. No, inflammation, you can see if your tummy is distended and hard like a rock, that is inflammation. But so is heart disease, and so is high blood pressure, and so is high cholesterol, and so is fatty liver disease. These are all inflammatory responses, and so is feeling like crap. There's some kind of inflammation going in the body, and we need to manage this visceral fat, and we need to do that by managing the way insulin works in the body. Remember, it's insulin, which is the fat storage hormone. There it is, right there. You know, you walked around life, you never had that before, but we have this visceral fat. It's just, we don't like it. We call it the muffin top. It feels like it's never going to go away, but you can make this go away by balancing out your hormones so that we can alleviate your symptoms of menopause and get all the hormones to work in their optimal range. Because I think no matter how old you are, everybody wants to feel good and they want to look good. And they always want to get into their pants so that they can just feel comfortable. Because I think today, what I'm experiencing nutritionists is that people are hiding. I did a big post today on hiding behind your sweatpants, on the couch, eating and drinking things that you shouldn't. It's time for us all to, we have the opportunity to really take our health back in our own hands, because otherwise we'll be able to feel our own fat in our own hands, and nobody likes that feeling. So is there a solution for all of this? So this next part of this webinar, I'm going to talk to you about what is a solution. What have I done as a nutritionist to help my clients achieve optimal weight and manage their menopausal symptoms? So this is what I'm going to present to you. So as a nutritionist, I spent years trying to figure out meal plans and supplementation for all of my clients, and I just never was able to find it. And really, all I did was get money in my pocket, but it didn't work for a lot of people until I found this program, which is called Metabolic Balance. So Metabolic Balance is a program that is worldwide. It currently is in 40 countries around the world, and it's designed to balance out your hormones, reduce inflammation, and help you to lose weight. And how does it do that? It takes a look at your 35 blood values. So my clients come in, I sit down with them, and we do a complete intake. What are you eating? What are you drinking? What are your habits? What foods do you like? Have you had any organs taken out of your body? Because this makes a big difference. Do you have migraine? Do you have acne? Do you have lupus? Do you have, I have like every type of client, people with Parkinson's, people with leukemia, people with, know if they've had a complete hysterectomy. It can work for every type of person because we want to bring balance back into the body. And that's what Metabolic Balance does. So Dr. Wolf, fun fact, who is the founder of this, he was actually a person that kind of coined the word the metabolic syndrome and talked about how we can balance out the hormones by blood value. So once we do this complete intake with a client, looking at everything and their personal goals. So a lot of my clients come in, they want to lose 2 pounds, they want to lose 100 pounds, and maybe they have menopausal symptoms, or maybe they have headaches or migraines or joint pain, or they've got vertigo. Every medical thing that a person has is taken into account. And then I give them a requisition where they go in Toronto to Life Labs. In the States, we use a different lab for that, which is Ultra Labs. They go and get their 35 blood values at the lab. Once we get the 35 blood values at the lab, then I'm able to, enter all this into a database. I think somebody has their, just 1 second, but somebody's not muted for the moment. We're just gonna, here we go, perfect. So all of these numbers, all these blood values, particularly all the liver enzymes. So you may have heard of GGT and ALT and AST. These are all markers for how your liver is functioning. We also look at the thyroid. We also look at the CRP, which stands for C-reactive protein, which is the level of inflammation in the body. And it's a really important number to create a plan. So we take all these values, all your white blood cell count, your red blood cell count, your triglycerides, your cholesterol, your amylase, your potassium, your sodium, everything that your doctor would do, but we also do that additional CRP. And what this does as a nutritionist, it gives me an opportunity to take a look at that and then to take a look at what it is you're looking for. So we know you want to balance out your hormones and particularly lose some weight. So then Metabolic Balance Germany, where this is the headquarters where they create plans for people all over the world, they create an individualized, customized plan for each person. I've done close to 1,000 of these programs, and there's never anybody who gets the same program. So it goes into a database, and as it goes into a database, it's married to the glycemic index of a food and the biological value of the food. So let's just say you have acne, or you have psoriasis, or you have lymphedema. All of these foods are taken into consideration with the blood value. So then what comes out of this program is a customized, individualized program that is the perfect protein, the perfect fat, and the perfect carbohydrates for you based on your blood values and based on your health history and based primarily on what it is that you're looking for, because Metabolic Balance has this database. They've taken every single food and measured it up. So for instance, if somebody's triglycerides are high, all these foods are gone. If somebody's inflammation marker is high, all these foods are gone. If I have low thyroid, all these foods are added or all these foods are subtracted. So it creates this program that's been individualized and customized that's working primarily to bring the insulin back into balance, as it's so unique in its formation. I just need a second here. So they have a specialized software that analyzes everything, and then that client receives their own customized plan, which is unbelievable because it really does work. And what comes from that, it generates a list of foods for that individual. So if I wanted to maybe manage my menopausal symptoms, then I will get my own list of foods. So your list versus somebody else's list is going to be completely different. And why is that? Because you have a different biochemistry than I do. You have a different metabolism than I do. You have different health concerns than your friends do. You have a different metabolism than your friends do. And we all know when we were going in high school, we sat in the cafeteria and we all ate lunch together. We're thinking, why the hell could she eat all that food and I can't eat anything and I'm gaining the weight? It's because you have a different biochemistry than everybody else. And that's why I'm not a big fan of those other programs out there where they just give you a list of things for everybody. Everybody eats the same thing, or they give you points. And with the point system, I'm not in agreement to that, because the point system doesn't actually manage your insulin. And the problem with the point system is that you could eat a piece of chocolate cake and have a glass of champagne and a bag of chips. That can be your points. And we really don't want to have to do that. So it generates a list of foods for each individual. Now, the beauty and the magic of metabolic balance, and I've been doing this for several years and I've helped so many clients, men and women and children, is the primary thing that it's going to be doing. It's going to balance out insulin the way nature intended it to. So let's just take a second here. If you woke up in the morning and you had a coffee and a bagel for breakfast, your insulin levels are going to go right through the roof. What metabolic balance does is these 8 rules will bring your insulin down. So think about sugars in your body. If you ever did a blood test for your blood fasting glucose, your sugar should be between 4 and 6, 4 and 7 all day. So you have this nice little ebb and flow all day. The problem is with the way that we're consuming our food today, that coffee and that bagel is going to skyrocket. And then you're going to get down into hunger and you're never going to feel satisfied. And that's a problem for you. So Metabolic Balance Germany created these 8 rules that will instantly start to stabilize your insulin, which has a domino effect on testosterone, on your DHEA, on your estrogen, on your pituitary, on your liver, on everything. And these are the rules. Having 3 meals a day. Now, a lot of you think, well, I don't really want to eat 3 meals a day. You've got to keep the fire stoked. You've got to keep your metabolism going all the time. It's really not good to go for long periods of time. I do myself from time to time some intermittent fasting, which is great, but you want to have 3 meals a day in order for us to balance out the hormones. And these rules, once a client's on these, they will follow these rules for the rest of their life. Then the second one is you have to take a break 5 hours before your next meal. Now, when I went to university and graduated in 1981, they told us that you needed to have 6 meals a day. That was the truth back then. But science now knows that you have to wait 5 hours between meals. And why is that? Because if you're always eating, if you're always snacking, insulin is always elevated. And if you eat between your meals, you're going to get into fat storage as opposed to fat burning. So the only thing you're going to have between a meal is a glass of water. Clean, plain water. Third rule is you're never going to allow a meal to last longer than 60 minutes. And we know sometimes we have dinner and then we get off the couch, we go get some chips, and we get off the couch, we go get some popcorn, we get off the couch at 10 o'clock and we go get those Oreo cookies. The problem with that is insulin levels have been elevated all night long. So when insulin levels are elevated, it's going to pack on those pounds and it's going to never allow you to get into fat storage. It doesn't matter how much exercise you're doing, because if you're not managing your insulin, then it's going to be a problem. And I know this for a fact, because when I was, in my early 20s, I used to marathon run, and I never could figure out why I could never lose weight. Because when I first graduated in nutrition, I got Bachelor of Science in nutrition. I understood the chemistry of nutrition, but I didn't understand the holistic way to eat. And I ended up going back to school. So here we were, running 18 miles on Saturday, practicing for the marathon and coming back and drinking Diet Coke and bagels. And I just packed on the pounds. But when I finally understood and finally knew how to eat properly, and I followed these rules myself, I found even through COVID, I just sailed right through it. It never was a problem for me. So you don't want any meal to last longer than 60 minutes. Of course, when all this pandemic is over, we go to a wedding, and the dinner goes on and on. You can do that. But while we're trying to really balance out your hormones, we want to follow these rules. Number 4 is always begin every meal with 2 bites of protein. Ladies, this is incredible. This is my favorite rule. I had about 10 clients who bought this program from me in December, but they didn't want to actually start it till January. And what happened was I gave them the rules and they all came back on January 1st saying, I can't believe it, but I already lost 5 pounds because it balanced out everything in the body. So why do you do that? You have 2 bites of protein. You see, when you have 2 bites of protein first, like eggs or cheese or meat, chicken or fish or some nuts, you instantly release glucagon, which we talked about earlier, and that's an antagonist of insulin. So when you do that, you'll instantly feel better because it releases another hormone in your brain, and then you're going to feel satisfied. So if I have an apple before my dinner, it's actually going to make me hungry. If I ever have to go to a cocktail party in the future, we all wish for restaurants to be open again. Before I walk out the door, I'm going to eat a little piece of cheese, or I'm going to eat a little piece of meat, or I'm going to have some nuts so that I'm not going to go to that party or dinner or whatever feeling really hungry, because the protein stabilizes your insulin very quickly and brings that insulin hormone back to normal again. And only 1 protein per meal. So you want to choose 3 different proteins a day. Why is that? Well, the biological value of an egg is 100%, but the biological value of a milk is 91%. So protein is made up of building blocks called amino acids, and they all have different ratios. So if I eat the egg, I get human protein in my muscles very quickly, but milk doesn't have quite enough of that. But the body will take the food with the lowest amount of amino acids, which is the milk, and it's going to leave my body with leftover acid. And when you have over acid, it's very difficult to lose weight. And next rule is don't eat after 9 o'clock. We all know that metabolism slows down in the evening. Now, I've got people that do shift, a lot of nurses and doctors that are doing the program with me right now, and they're on shift work. So we just basically turn their whole day around, and that can work for them as well. But if you live a normal life and work 9 to 5 or something like that, then you don't want to eat after 9 o'clock in the evening. And then, of course, there's water. You need to drink 35 milliliters of water per kilogram. It's amazing how many, even growing up as a kid in the 60s, no one ever took a water bottle to work with them or to school with them. And we do need to drink that water. And the more water you drink, the more satisfied you are, and the more you can actually stimulate your metabolism by just drinking it. So I personally try to drink about 2.5 to 3 liters of water a day. And you will pee a lot in the beginning, but then it'll slow down because your body is able to absorb it. And then lastly is we have to have an apple every day. Why? Because there's no other fruit that lowers your uric acid and your cholesterol like an apple. So these are the 8 magical rules of metabolic balance. When my clients follow these, this stabilizes your insulin and helps them to manage the visceral fat, which then manages all the menopausal symptoms. So this is a wonderful tool to have at your fingertips. So when the person comes in, we do the intake, they go get their blood. This information is now sent off to Germany. They will then get their individualized, customized program for them personally. So they will get a template that will look similar to this. And you'll notice that they've got 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, and 3 dinners. So suggestion 1, 2. So she or he can have this for breakfast, this for lunch, and this for dinner, but it's exactly the foods that we're going to be giving them. So with metabolic balance, there's 4 phases to this program. We do a little bit of a cleanse in the beginning, and that cleanse exists of giving you something to drink. So you basically empty your bowels for 2 days, and most of my clients don't like me after that, but I got over it. And they drink this stuff, and then they either have fruit all day, vegetables all day, potatoes all day, rice, just to clear the palate and also detoxify them, give that liver a rest that it's looking for. And it also desensitizes you from sugar and from salt, which is when we have these imbalances of sugar, usually sugar is a candida problem and salt is a adrenal problem, which we already talked about. So we want to make sure that we can actually, get them. So every person gets their own plan. So you'll see that she's got like yogurt, fruit and bread. And so on the following sheets for the client, they will be given a list of what kind of yogurt can she have, what kind of fruit can she have, and bread. But here's the interesting thing. Take a look at this. You got fruit, fruit, bread, bread, fruit, fruit. And all my clients, all my women clients are like, oh my God, I can't eat that fruit. It's going to make me fat. I can't eat that bread. It's going to make me fat. That is hogwash. You need your fruit. You need the digestive enzymes. You need the phytonutrients. You need the biological value of these foods. You need to combine it. Your grandmother ate them. We need to eat them. So most people have actually 3 servings of fruit a day. Worldwide, the 3 top ones are apples, mangoes, and papaya. Apples because of what I explained, and papaya and mango because they contain a lot of digestive enzymes. They lower inflammation in the body, and they really get the gut health back to normal again. So yes, you have to measure your food for the duration of your program. So she's got 85 grams of cheese, vegetables, fruit, and bread. So this bread is 100% rye bread or 100% rye Vita crackers. And the reason we're using only rye bread here, it has a low glycemic index. And if you don't know what glycemic index means, it means it doesn't burn fast. So food either burns like fast or really slow. So things that burn really fast are things that you get in your body and they quickly burn. That would be like pasta, and that would be like ice cream, and that'd be like white bread. Problem with that, then I'm going to be hungry again. But the bread, the 100% rye bread, it burns slow. You want food in your tummy, you want the fat in your tummy. So she can have like goat cheese, 110 grams of avocado, an apple, and this bread. I got to tell you, this is one of the most satisfying. This is on my plan that I follow. I also love this one. And this is usually 3.8% fat. So ladies, if you think that eating low fat food is good for you, I'm here to tell you it is the worst thing because number 1, you're not going to feel full. Number 2, you need to carry your fat soluble vitamins through your body, vitamin A, E, and K, and D. And if you don't have fat, you can't absorb it. And you need to make sure that you get that fat because the fat makes you feel full and also your cells need that fat. So you can see it's very satisfying. She doesn't want to eat the bread. She doesn't have to eat the bread. So here she's got 100 grams of legumes. So that's dry. So she's got 200 grams. That's like almost a half a pound of chickpeas for lunch with a salad and her apple and her bread. Very satisfying food. Very simple to make. Nothing fancy about this. I could make this food in 1 second here, open this can right here and prepare my fish and my vegetables and my bread. So in the beginning, we don't have any extra fat added to the diet, but after 16 days, we add 3 tablespoons of oil, 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds, 1 hour of exercise, and once a week you can eat and drink whatever you want for 1 meal, and then you're back on your program the very next day. So really, it's real food. It's perfect for you. There are no pills, there are no supplements, there are no shakes, and there are no cravings. And that's what we're looking for. We really want to make sure that we get all of that here. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to mute everybody for a second. So that's the formal part of my presentation. And what I would like to do, I know that we've probably got some questions here, and I'm going to look at that. Also, if you want to unmute yourself, you can do that. Give me 1 second here.